Thanks for the great intro. Today, before we get into the topic, I know I'm standing between you and the lunch, so I'll try to keep mine brief and interesting. The topic is 3 by 3, but I would like to start off by sharing a personal story, and let me tell you how that story actually connects with the topic of discussion today. I have two kids, a girl and a boy, 11 and 8 years. Every year, my husband and I, we take our kids to India so that they could get to see the roots, the Indian culture. We also make it a point to take them to one new place that we have not seen before. And one such year, we decided to go to Mumbai. Anyone here in this crowd who have been to Mumbai or who have visited Mumbai? I see a few hands, that's good. So for those of you who want to visualize how Mumbai is, it's very crowded, high traffic, weather is unpredictable, heavy monsoon rains several times during the year. So you must be wondering why I'm sharing the story. Let me get to that. When we got off the train station in Mumbai, this was a sight actually that intrigued me. I was like, wow, there are these stacks of lunch boxes being delivered. So I was curious to know, and I tried to find out more about this organization. Thanks to Google, I was able to look up more information. These people are called Dabbawalas, and there is a whole organization that is being run behind this group. What does Dabbawala mean? Dabba is a lunch box, and Wala is somebody who carries the lunch box from one place to another. So when I try to find out more information about this, it looks like every day there are around 300,000 boxes that get delivered from one place to several destinations in Mumbai and so many different offices. 300,000 is a lot and happening every single day. And then the next thing, which was also like really aroused my curiosity is, okay, how much of time do they take? For people who grew up and who were raised in India, you might know like any food that is not hot is considered stale food. So the food has to be delivered fresh and hot. And what I came to know is all these 300,000 boxes do get delivered in a span of 3 hours or less. And the reason I started off saying like Mumbai is a very crowded city, like there is heavy traffic, you have unpredictable weather, rain or shine, these lunch boxes do get delivered in this set time of 3 hours or less. So that is the timing. I was like, wow, so they are able to do it fast. And maybe even this is not heroic. If you consider like you can put an army behind it, you can plan and work out the logistics. If you just wanted to do this for a day, a couple of days, maybe on certain occasions. But this initiative, the Dabbawala, has been going on for over 100 years. So every single day, they are able to deliver this high volume of 300,000 boxes and in less than 3 hours. And what is even more interesting is the quality level. I mean, I have had the experience both on Amazon and eBay where I've had the wrong shipment delivered to me. So I was thinking like, wow, this massive volume, maybe there are quality issues. But it so turns out to be that only 1 out of 6 million boxes, like a wrong lunchbox, gets delivered. That's like very high precision given the volume and the number of people that are actually working behind the scenes, which happens to be very thin and lean. So remember these 3 things: speed, the 3 hours; quality, just 1 in 6 million boxes have had issues; and then the consistency that it's been happening for at least 125 years right now. In fact, there is an ongoing case study at Harvard around this. So keep these 3 in mind, and I'll get to the topic. So now, what is 3 by 3? So there are 2 3s, as you can see. The first 3 is the number of hours, 3 hours from commit to deploy, when it actually reaches our customers or members' hands. And the second 3 is the actual number of deployments or releases that happen to our members every single day. So 3 by 3, 3 hours from commit to deploy, and the second 3 is 3 deployments or releases per day. So you may be wondering, why? Why do we need to go 3 by 3? I'll actually go down the memory lane. 3.5 years ago at LinkedIn, we used to be on a monthly release cadence, both for mobile as well as for web. And it used to be such a painful process because we used to be, as engineering team, at the mercy of product team deciding which features go on what release. And if it so happens one of your engineers introduces a bug and it's not on time for that release, you will have to wait for another 1 month to push your changes out to the site. So one, I think from a business benefit, from a competitive landscape, it was very slow and painful. The other angle to take is engineering efficiency and productivity. Imagine you have just say one line of change, and to push that change takes a month, and then you have to wait for your next monthly cycle is definitely inefficient and not the most productive use of all our engineers. And the last thing why we wanted to introduce 3x3 is we wanted to bring a huge cultural shift in the company. We wanted to have a broader sense of accountability, ownership, and transparency into how we release software and the quality of our product and apps. We wanted to get away from the mindset where code gets done by certain individual, it gets thrown over the wall, and then there are a lot of issues, and then there are multiple teams and handoffs and skip levels happening at every stage. So, what were our underlying tenets or principles when we were on this mission of 3x3? It's speed, it's consistency, and it's quality. So now you may be able to relate the Dabbawalia story to this. So if you look at speed, we wanted to ship like at the rate of like at least having 3 builds a day to our members and customers, and make sure that we are able to contain it within the 3-hour window. And the speed includes not just speed of writing your feature, but once you write your feature, you want to make sure your builds are lightning fast, your test execution time is fast, the deployment tools have no friction, and you are able to go on a very rhythmic pattern of having these 3 releases every single day. The second thing is consistency. You want to make sure we have a solid foundation in terms of infrastructure and tooling to make this happen, to enable this. In the past, used to be this ping-ponging. Oh, it's these testers who have had issues, or it's the tooling, or it's the infrastructure. Sometimes it's the buggy code. You want to make sure the infrastructure and the foundation is rock solid so that you can enable this smooth delivery of 3x3 every single day. And the last is quality. We wanted to achieve 2 things. One, we wanted to fail fast. Yes, I mean quality, you need to make sure it is at an acceptable risk level. But imagine a world where the engineer knows that even if the fix has not gone in a particular build, maybe not 10 a.m., but they know that they do have a next window of opportunity coming on the same day in another 3 hours. It gives so much of confidence. You are able to iterate the features faster. Of course, you have to take intelligent risks because in this window of time, as much as you automate, there are going to be trade-offs. And how do you take the intelligent risks of what to focus on around testing, what is the gap, and how do you mitigate those risks are all important. Now, how did we realize the vision? It definitely seemed very daunting when we started on this journey 3 years ago because it felt like, wow, we are on a monthly cycle. There are so many people who are used to operating in a certain way. We are keeping a stretch goal of having multiple builds a day. In fact, several of our engineers had asked our leadership team this question. We are on monthly releases. Why can't we get to weekly or maybe daily releases? Why should we have this uber goal of multiple releases a day? Especially with native apps, we are not going to push it to our App Store and Play Store multiple times. And the reason we had kept this stretch goal, again, primarily I would say twofold. One is if you are having a goal of a daily release or a weekly release, the normal tendency would be Let's try to attack the low-hanging fruits. Let's see what we can automate, how much we can automate, and there will be a delta left, and probably that could be covered by manual means. If you do have a stretch goal of 3 hours, I think it really shifted our mindset into how we need to think about building stuff, developing stuff, testing, and pushing it out the door. And that put us in a blank slate of all the things we need to engineer and automate to get us to this state. So that was primarily one reason. And the second reason was we were seeing our other social networking sites, Facebook, whether it's web or mobile, the rapid pace at which they were able to push stuff to their customers and members. So we wanted to learn from that and see how we can pioneer in our technology space. So I may not be able to share all the recipes here, but I would be more than happy to connect with all of you, like post this session or via LinkedIn. But I'll briefly touch upon like some of the key needle movers or the big rocks that we had attacked. If you look at the developer experience, there are primarily 2 phases. One is the pre-commit phase. So in this phase, the developer has his change isolated to himself, and you want to make sure that he's able to build that locally, and we had introduced a lot of safety nets in place here. Because as you all know, catching bugs earlier in the life cycle is more cheaper, and you're able to detect it faster, which helps you downstream. So we had introduced a lot of linters and static analysis checks, especially for things like layout. You know your text strings, you know the length, you know the limits. If you do care about globalizing your feature, there are a lot of locales. For example, Arabic, you have to operate from right to left. So whatever checks and balances you could do upfront, we made sure we have automated pre-commit hooks to catch these issues upstream. So I would say that was one major change that we had introduced. And then once your change is committed, again, there are a few phases on or things that we did to improve our build speed, our test speed, as well as the deployment efficiency. So on the builds, in certain cases, especially on the iOS app, like whenever we have had compiler performance issues or bugs, we work closely with Apple, trying to debug the native code and see how we could partner with Apple in terms of improving the efficiency. And the same we had done for Android as well as our web. Our web, we are on Ember Stack, so that's a technology that we use. So in all the 3 cases, anything that we could do to optimize the builds, both from an architectural standpoint, from a compiler standpoint, we made sure we had done the optimization. The other thing that we also did is to distribute the builds. We have a distributed build cache, so we build the key binaries that we need, push it out to all the machines, and then kickstart our tests. So on the test infrastructure side, we also did a lot of parallelization, where we ran our test simultaneously across several different continuous integration machines. And that allowed us to speed up the execution time for testing. This also actually let us, again, think hard on what kind of tests to author and how we need to be writing them. In the past, there were a lot of dependency between the tests. They were not discrete, they were not independent, and you cannot distribute the test if you are in that world. So we had to completely rethink our authoring strategy so that the tests that we write, we are able to run everywhere, and we are able to run them independently. And post the test phase was the deployment phase. Again, with deployment, there were a lot of tooling issues that were plaguing us. So trying to get to the root of what those issues were, identifying the friction and bottleneck, and seeing what we could do to improve some of the in-house tools that we have built, came a long way in actually finding out, oh, okay, we are trying to push this stuff out, but we are unable to do so. Like, what are some of the issues? Is it because of an infrastructure issue? Is it the underlying code that is causing a problem? Is it a tools issue? So trying to able to pinpoint where the issue is so that we could isolate defects quickly and speed up our releases was another thing that we had done. So once you push your changes to the artifact tree, in the post-commit phase, I have split this into 2. Again, we have different model for native app releases and different model for our web deployments. So let me start off with web. So for web, once we push our changes to the Artifactory, the next step that we do is a stage called Canary, where we divert a portion of the live traffic, like say 1 to 5%, to make sure it is battle tested with our real members, because sometimes the issues that our tests, our manufacturer tests may not be able to catch, we will be able to detect with the live traffic. We also do a performance benchmark comparison between the new and the old build. Once we know that there are no exceptions and the thresholds are not exceeded in terms of what we had set, then we push the changes to one data center for web. We get the learnings from the one data center. Again, if there are no red flags, we have set a lot of monitoring and alerts in place. Then if things look good, they propagate automatically to all the other data centers in production. So that's the story for web. For native app, again, we have slightly different model for iOS and Android. For Android, we have alpha release. So although we don't have like 3 releases to the Play Store every day, we do have 3 releases to our internal members who dog food our features, and they provide good amount of signals for us to know whether there are any crashes or issues. And then for Android, we have a public beta program where around 10,000 people have signed up for this. This is a feature offered by the Google's Play Store. So again, more coverage, more signals, more issues, and if that looks good, we push to production. So today, we have like 3 public betas for Android and 1 release every single week. On the iOS side, things are slightly different. There is no concept of public beta. We still have the multiple builds and releases to our members. We are in the process of partnering with TestFlight to make sure we do the public beta. That way we have external members accessing our newest and latest features like every single day. And then even on the iOS side, we try to release like once per week. Now actually this 3x3 is a reality, has been a reality for the past 1 to 2 years. But if I think about it, the journey or the path was definitely rocky. It was daunting. It was not hunky-dory. There are a lot of lessons we have learned. And I would say we are continuing to learn and evolve and perfect ourselves. So I'll just like to call out a few key learnings from our experience. The first thing I would start off is what gets measured is what will get fixed. We knew we were on a monthly release. We knew we wanted to get to 3x3, but we did not have a good handle of what the long pole was, what was the friction. We were not able to measure every step. So we had to put a lot of instrumentation in place so that we could measure every step in the pipeline, see which was taking the longest time, and then trying to optimize that. So tooling and providing visibility was an eye-opening exercise for us. Then we could quickly attack the problems. Oh, it is build, or it's a test execution time, or it's a tooling issue, or it's buggy code written. So that provided us a lot of data and insights for us to optimize. The second one, I touched upon this earlier, a lot of static checks and analysis happening early in the cycle so that we could catch a lot of stuff in an automated fashion rather than relying on manual means or having like end-to-end automation late in the cycle. The third thing is a test pyramid. I'm sure you have all seen the food pyramid diagram. So we follow something similar on the test front too, where our focus is to do a lot of unit tests. When I say a lot, maybe at least 60% of our tests are in general unit tests. That way, the reason is it is isolated. You're able to just quickly test the portion of code that you have touched. You can, mocking is harder, it is expensive, but at least you can quickly isolate it to the change that you have made, and the execution times are way faster when you compare unit tests to other kinds of tests. So we make sure that at least greater than 50%, 60 to 70% of our tests are unit tests. And then the next layer, we have something called layout tests. And what this layout focuses on is making sure the general layout of a web page or a screen on our native app conforms to certain specifications, whether where they are placed, the color, the font, the length, the data type that it needs to be. We make sure that we validate. And again, there are these nuances with all of the localized languages. So those are some of the checks we are able to detect using the layout tests. The third layer on top of it is what we call as scenario tests. Here is where we make sure the user interaction and the business logic gets tested. Hey, I click a button, there is a certain action that gets performed. Are these two going hand in hand? Is the expected behavior happening? And those scenario tests, again, we try to mark all the downstream dependencies, and that is one layer above. So you have the unit, and then the layout, and then the scenario tests. The last, or the very small portion, I would say less than 0.5% of our tests, we have the live tests. These are end-to-end tests that our customers experience, like either it's registration or searching or identifying or viewing a profile, whatever may be the normal user behavior. We work with our product and business partners to identify the heat map. What is the 80% user scenario? What are the most commonly hit flows? Taking them and running those end-to-end tests in production. The reason we kept this, again, very small set is because these tests are bound to be extremely flaky. You do not know these tests. Maybe there is an issue with the user interface, or sometimes with the business logic or data storage. Things could go wrong anywhere, and hence the test may not be as reliable. So we did two things. One, keep it to a bare bone minimum, and second, running these tests in production, which gave us a high fidelity against which we could operate. So we have a lot of blog posts around this test pyramid, and that's something that we follow and enforce. We also have tooling in place when a certain group within our LinkedIn flagship app, if they exceed the threshold, say just 30% unit, and they tip over scenario tests, we have tooling to alert us. Again, we want to make sure these tests are fast, they are not brittle, they are efficient, and you're able to not violate the 3x3. The other thing, which I'm sure you will all be able to realize, is not everything can be automated. Of course, probably they can. Every problem has a technical solution, but I think the cost and the return has to be considered so that we can make the right trade-offs. There are a few use cases. For example, in the mobile world, I want to upgrade my app from one version to the other, or there are these variety of probably browsers on the website, or devices and OS versions on the native app side. To the extent possible, yes, we can automate and run against all these permutations and combinations, but there are a few. Do you need to run this iteration every single commit of every single developer every single day? Maybe not, right? And those are the intelligent risks of maybe there are certain use cases which don't need to be tested frequently, but could be tested on a needed basis, or trying to identify what is the right coverage, which will help us prioritize our business needs and make sure we are able to mitigate the risks. But in wherever we could not automate, we have put the tools as our safety nets. Some of the examples I can give you is we have tools around dog fooding adoption within LinkedIn. So every week we send a report so that every single engineering leader knows whether their portion of the app or the website has been dog fooded heavily by the internal employees. And if there is a low percentage, for example, we noticed that registration was not dog fooded that much, obviously because people don't get to register every single time. We are all registered users, and we just exercise the other portions of the product. So if we identify gaps in this dog fooding, and we try to see how we can beef up the coverage. The other thing we also do is to make sure we have targeted bug bashes for certain areas. We have alerts and monitoring in place when there are exceptions, and those get cleaned up and monitored periodically so that we get the right signal to noise ratio. So overall, if we look back at the journey, It's been extremely fulfilling, I would say. Right now, 3x3 has become a reality. People thought it was going to be a dream which we would never be able to realize, especially in the mobile space, given that we have a lot of nuances and reliance on App Store and Play Store. But this has been there, it's in motion. We are constantly trying to evolve and iterate and see how we could improve further so that, hey, at least we don't want technology to be the impediment for us to push the features out to our members and customers. At any given point of time, product can make a call, but our focus was to make sure the tooling and the infrastructure and the pipeline is there so that this is a well-oiled machine and we could deliver code 3x3. So with that, I like to tie it back to the story that I started with around the Dabbawalas. Speed, quality, consistency. And that's what we want to strive for at LinkedIn. We want to push stuff out rapidly. We want to be having the ability to do it consistently. We also want to make sure our quality is at reasonably good levels and we are able to mitigate the risks and fail fast. And that's it from me today. I'm super passionate on this topic, so if you have any questions, comments, feedback, or you want to share best practices, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'll be happy to do so. Thank you.